Hello, my name is Professor Rad, and in this video we'll be talking about how to round a real number. So really rounding any decimal number. So the process for this is going to be really similar to rounding whole numbers. So if you need a refresher on that, you can go back and watch the video on rounding whole numbers, because as we're going to see, the process is super duper similar. So if you want to pause the video here and copy down this note, feel free to do so. This is going to be our steps for rounding decimals or rounding real numbers. So to round a real number, first we're going to find the digit in the place value we care about, and then we'll underline it. And then you go to the digit immediately to the right of the one we underlined. And if it's smaller than 5, we're going to keep that underlined digit. And if it's 5 or more, we're going to increase that underlined digit by 1. And remember, in the past when we did this, if 9 is involved, that can sometimes create a chain reaction. So we'll make sure we do an example with that chain reaction here today. After you do figure out what happens to the underlined digit, everything to the left is going to stay the same, and then everything to the right turns into a 0. So far this whole process is identical to whole numbers. The fourth step is where it's an extra step. It's not even different, it's just extra. And this says we're going to remove any unnecessary zeros. So when you're rounding a decimal number, once you turn things into zeros, then you might have some unnecessary zeros. And one of the points of rounding a number is so that you can write it in more concise and easy to digest or understand format. So we want to get rid of any unnecessary zeros when we write our final answer. So let's walk through these examples of rounding to the indicated place values. So we're going to round 584 and 1,763 10,000ths to the nearest tenth. So to start out with, we're going to underline the digit that's in the tenths place. So remember to look for the decimal point, and the digit immediately to the left is in the ones place. So I still need to identify my ones place to help me identify my decimal place values. So the digit that's in the tenths place is immediately to the right of that decimal point. So here's our ones, and then we count tenths. So we underlined it. Now we're going to look at the digit immediately to the right. So immediately to the right is a 7. 7 is bigger than 5. So we're going to increase the underlined digit by 1. So that means this 1 that we wrote is going to turn into a 2. Then we keep the digits on the left. So 5, 8, and 4, we're going to keep all of that, and we keep the decimal point as well. And then we're going to replace the digits on the right with 0. So the 7 turns into a 0, 6 becomes 0, and 3 becomes 0. So far everything is the same as it was with whole numbers, just we have a decimal place value instead of a whole number place value. To finish off, we're going to remove any unnecessary zeros. So remember, if it's all the way to the right if it's on the right-hand side of a decimal point and it's the last digit and it's a 0, then it's unnecessary. We can get rid of it. So if I look, here's my decimal point. The last digit all the way on the right is a 0. So it's unnecessary. So that means we don't have to write it. So I'm just going to get rid of it like that, erase it. Good reason to use pencil, right? And then we repeat that process. So last digit on the right, still a 0. So that means this 0 is not necessary. Okay, last digit on the right, still a 0, means we don't need it. And now we have our last digit all the way to the right, and it's not a 0 anymore. So that means we are done. So 584 and 1,763 10,000ths rounded to the nearest tenth is 584 and 2/10. All right, let's take a look at this next example, which looks like pretty much the same thing, right? We have the same number, but this time, instead of rounding to the tenths place, we're going to round to the nearest 10. So this one, we have that added trickery of needing to be on the lookout for a whole number versus a decimal place value. So remember, the TH means it's on the right-hand side of a decimal point. No TH means we're going to be on the left-hand side. So as before, the 4 is in the ones place. So to find the tens place, that's going to be in the spot immediately to the left. So the 8 is currently in the tens place. That's step 1. Step 2, we're going to look at the digit immediately to the right. So immediately to the right is a 4. 4 is smaller than 5, so we're going to keep that underlined digit. So we're going to keep this 8 the same. Then we keep the digits on the left, so meaning to the left of the underlined number. So we keep the 5. And we're going to replace the digits to the right with a 0. So this 4 becomes a 0. I bring down my decimal point. And 1763, each of those is going to turn into a 0. All right, so that's going to be step 3. Step 4, we're going to remove any unnecessary zeros. So we can go through the same process as we did before in part A. So all the way to the right is a 0, and it's to the right of a decimal point, so it's not necessary. We can get rid of it. That means this 0, since it's the last digit to the right of a decimal point, still not necessary. This 0, last 0 to the right of a decimal point, not necessary. Same thing here, right? So this 0 is to the right of a decimal point, so it's not necessary. So now the last digit on the right is a 0, but notice this 0 is to the left of the decimal point. So that means that 0 we need to keep. In fact, we've gotten rid of all of the digits that we had written to the right of the decimal point. So if you want to rewrite this as just 580, you can. So 584 and 1,763 10,000ths to the nearest 10 is going to be 580. All right, and let's look at this last example here. We have 26.3995, and we're going to round that to the nearest thousandth. So same as always, we're going to find our ones place because that helps us identify place values in a real number. So here's our decimal point. Immediately to the left is the ones place. So now I have to figure out where is the thousandths place. So here's my ones. That means this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this 9 is in the 1,000ths or the thousandths place. I'm being careful here because we had a TH. If there was no TH, the thousand, then that would be on the left somewhere. So be careful with whether there's a TH or not. Then we're going to look at the digit immediately to the right. So immediately to the right of this underlined 9 is a 5. So if it's 5 or more, we have to increase the underlined digit by 1. So this is a situation where we have a 9 that's going to increase. If this had been like a 3, then we would just keep a 9, we'd have no trouble. But because this is 5 or more, that means this 9 has to go up to the next number. And the next number after 9 is 10. So remember, this 9 then turns into a 0, and it's like we carry that 1 over to the next place. And here we have kind of a chain reaction, because now we have 9 plus 1 makes 10 again. So this 9 is going to be like a 0, and we carry the 1 of the 10 over to the next place value. And now we have 3 plus 1 to give us 4. So this is an instance where the rules are a little bit fudgy because you're not just increasing one digit. We increase the underlying digit, but that caused a chain reaction to increase these other digits as well. After we've done all of that, now we're going to keep everything that was on the left. So I'm going to bring down my decimal point, and I keep the 26. And everything to the right gets replaced by a 0. So in this case, that's just the 5 gets turned into a 0. All right, then to finish, we have to get rid of all the unnecessary zeros. So I'm going to rewrite this one here. So this 0 was all the way to the right of a decimal point on the end, so we can get rid of it. Same thing, we can get rid of this one, and we can get rid of this one. But we need the 4 because it is not a 0, so we need to keep it. And there are no zeros for us to worry about anymore. So 26.3995 rounded to the nearest thousandth is going to be 26.4. Now, depending on your teacher, they may not want this answer. They may want you to write this answer as 26.400 because you're indicating that you rounded to the thousandths place. If you're taking a class with me, I prefer it just to look as nice and short as possible. So I would prefer the 26.4, although I would probably mark both of them correct. All right, so that's going to wrap up this video on rounding real numbers. In the next video, we're going to look at some special place values for real numbers that were a little bit different from whole numbers. So we're going to do a little bit more rounding in the next video to some particular special named place values. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in that one. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day, and bye for now.